I bet you've heard the term partial die cutting, and maybe you have even wondered what it means. In this video, I'll show you the infinite power of partial die cutting and what it can do for your die cuts and cards. Hi everyone, I'm Yana, a card maker on YouTube. Welcome back to my channel. Partial die cutting is exactly that. You cut something out, but only partially. How can you do that? By only partially covering the die when you cut. Sounds confusing, right? Well, let me show you. Partial die cutting is great for when you need to create a shaped card base, like this apartment building, or if you need to extend the die and make it different, longer or wider. All you need for partial die cutting are the usual tools: a die cutting machine, a die, and paper. I'm going to make a card and show you how you can apply partial die cutting to your card making. I'm first starting with a sheet of cardstock. This is chiffon from Spellbinders, and I'm going to cut it to a slightly more manageable size. So this is 3.5 by 8.5 inches. I'm making a slimline card, and this is going to work perfectly for the card size I have in mind. Here I have the City Holiday die set from my City Holiday collection with Spellbinders. You can see that this is a 3-story building. I'm going to cut it partially twice to create a 4-story building that's also not as wide, a little bit more narrow. If you look at this die, you see that there are windows in the center and on the left, and then there is a column with windows and the door on the right or on the left. I'm lost where is left or right. Anyhow, we need the left-hand side of this die to die cut just the windows, so this area. I'm going to position that on my paper and use best ever craft tape. You need any low-tech tape that you have in your stash to secure the die in place. So make sure you tape it. By the way, you can do this technique with many other dies that you might already have in your stash. It doesn't work with every single die out there. Some outline dies are not going to be good for this. So just keep that in mind. Not every die is a good choice for partial die cutting, but a lot of dies are. And this technique really lets you stretch the use of your dies. Let's grab our die cutting machine. I'm using Platinum 6 from Spellbinders and do the die cutting. So I'm grabbing my die cutting machine. This is Platinum 6 from Spellbinders. I have my sandwich already created. So I have the paper with the die sitting on top, and as you can see, it is taped. I'm next going to place the top cutting plate over my die, but I'm not going to cover the entire thing. This is where that keyword partial comes into place. I'm partially covering the die. I have the top cutting plate about 1/4 inch from the edge of my die. So not closer, not any closer than 1/4 inch. You can have it further away, but not any closer. So make sure you're not covering that area where we have the yellow tape. And then send it through a die cutting machine and cut it out. And let's take a look and see what we have. Okay, here I have my paper partially cut with the windows imprinted into the paper or pressed into the paper. So I now have a partially created, like a partial die cut. I'm going to repeat this now and do another partial cut to extend this die. So in a way, in this video, I'm showing you partial die cutting and also how to extend a die. First, I'm going to flip this to the back and align the left cut edge with the edge of my paper where I've made the cut. Next, I'm trying to feel with my fingers and make sure that my die sort of snaps into place. It's hard to explain, but it's easy to feel. As you can see, this particular die, it has windows that indent into the paper. And I'm trying to make sure that I snap my paper in place. I did move the die up by 1 row of windows to make sure that I am extending this, but I also need to make sure that the bottom row windows or like the middle row windows are aligned. I hope you guys understand what I mean. Anyhow, I have used tape. I taped everything down. And now this time we need to make sure not to cut along that bottom edge. So this time we are going to cover the edge where we have the best ever craft tape, but we're not going to cover the die with the top cutting plate all the way to the bottom. As you can see, I have about 1/2 inch uncovered. So make sure you do that. Leave about 1/2 inch uncovered so that you don't cut this die in half. And the moment of truth, let's take a look and see if we succeeded. And yay, looks like we did. We now have a totally different die cut. I do have a little imperfection over there. You can see that the second row of windows, the second from the top, did not align exactly perfectly, but it's good enough. It's close enough for me. So this is a little look at the partial die cutting and also a little look at how you can extend your die. I am going to show you the partial die cutting one more time in this video when I do additional die cuts for this apartment building. But for now, I need to trim this down a little bit to make it symmetrical on both sides. So I'm trimming this a little bit less than 2.5 inches. So I've trimmed that awkward row of windows from the left. And next I'm going to cut a little bit from the right, just so that, again, everything is symmetrical and the windows are centered on my tall apartment building. And here we go. This now looks like a cool, tall house. Now, when you look at this die kit, you can see that there's a roof. There is a die to create a roof. And obviously, this die will create a roof that's large enough for the main apartment building, for the main City Holiday die. But we need this to be smaller, and we once again can make it smaller by doing partial die cutting. So here I've cut this piece once. Now my paper was a little bit too short, so I didn't even cut the entire piece. I created, I created a partial piece. But now I'm going to cut the second edge with a die so that everything matches. I used my apartment building die to measure the length of the roof. I taped it in place using my best ever craft tape. And now for this particular piece, I need to make sure that I just make a little cut. I need to make sure that I cover that area where the edge of the die overlaps the paper with a cutting plate. So I'm just going to do that. So place my top cutting plate on top. Just cover that edge. I don't want the top cutting plate to extend all the way through my die because this particular die adds detail. It adds a little additional cut marks to this roof piece, and I don't want to do that. So I placed it just at the end. I send it through, and now my roof piece is ready. I have a custom partial cut roof for this piece, and check it out. It looks fantastic, doesn't it? Oh, I love it, love it. The partial die cutting portion of this video is now done. You guys now know how to do partial die cutting and use that to your advantage to alter your die cuts. I now need something from you. I need your feedback. Please pop into the comments and give me a quick yes, no. Yes, you've tried partial die cutting. No, you haven't tried partial die cutting, but you are going to give it a try. Next, I'm going to show you how I use this tall, skinny building to create a Christmas card. As you can see, this die cut now warps slightly. It bends a little bit. So I went ahead and I cut another piece of cardstock just using my paper trimmer to back this die cut up. And now it looks a little bit sturdier, a little bit more substantial for my card. I'm going to do the same. I'm going to add a little piece of cardstock from the back of my die cut roof piece. I'm using double-sided tape for all of these pieces and just going to adhere that from the back. And then use a dot of glue. This is barely our glue to adhere the roof onto my apartment building. Now, this is actually not going to be an apartment building. This is going to be a storefront. If you go to Europe, I don't know, maybe you have stores like that in the US, maybe in New York or like big cities like Los Angeles, where stores decorate the fronts of their buildings for Christmas. And that looks absolutely magical. It's just so inspiring. So that was my idea for this card. I wanted to create a decorated store front. Here I have already added windows onto my tall building. And I cut everything using chiffon. That's the color for the background. White for the outline of the windows. I actually used brushed white. That's my favorite cardstock. I used waterfall for the light for the area inside the windows, and then tutu for the curtains. I foiled the sentiment in that large display window, and I used a sentiment that reads Merry Everything and Happy Always from my Christmas Better Press sentiments from my Christmas collection for this year. You can do a different sentiment in there. You'll just need to find something small that could fit inside that window. I foiled this one using matte white foil. You guys know me, that's my favorite. And next, I'm going to use the Winter Wonderland collection from Spellbinders. I have this phenomenal Cocoa Wonderland die set that I've been meaning to use to decorate the front of my house. Now, this is something a little bit outside the box. So the Cocoa Wonderland die set, it creates a fun mug, a shaped mug, a Santa-shaped mug that you can decorate for Christmas. I thought that I would use the mug and all the bits and pieces from this die set to decorate my building. I put everything together. I've already cut everything out and I assembled everything. I do have additional colors of cardstock. Here I have my little color chart for you so you can keep an eye on the colors that I'm using. But basically I brought in peridot, which is that nice green, as well as the wild berry, which is the darker pink, the hotter pink. The mug itself is going to go on the bottom of my apartment building, and it is going to create the front, like the grand entrance for my building. I'm also placing the foam at the very top of the building, like on the roof of the building, because I want to have extra decorations there. The door is going to go over the face of the mug. I know it's kind of different, but that's how I envisioned it. And I've seen storefronts like that where they are decorated in all sorts of funky and unexpected ways, and that's what I wanted to do for this card. So I also have other die cuts, and they're going to be used to decorate the rest of this card. Now for the card base, I created one. This is again a slimline card. So this is 3.5 by 8.5 inches. And this is created from Spellbinders Indigo cardstock. So I have that card base made from indigo. I also have another panel, again, indigo, and I foiled this panel using the confetti Better Press plate and white foil. I did have to foil this twice. As you can see, I foiled it once, rotated the plate, and foiled it again to make sure I foiled the entire panel, because the panel is obviously larger than my plate, but I was able to do that here, no problem, because this particular plate is not that hard to repeat. I then trimmed my panel to 3.5 inches and I adhered it onto my card base. I also plan to add a panel, a white cardstock panel to the inside of the card, so it's a little easier to write a message, but for now there's no panel there on the inside. Next, I'm using foam adhesive. I have some foam adhesive tape, and I'm foam mounting my building, my storefront in the center of my card. I'm adding foam to the top. Going to use glue to adhere the shaped mug where the first floor of my building is. And I really like how different this looks. It's very unexpected. I'm going to use the rest of the pieces to decorate my building. But while I do that, I wanted to talk a little bit about ways you can stretch your dies and use your supplies to come up with new and different and unexpected designs. So here I'm combining sets that are very different. When you look at these two sets on the website, you probably don't think of making one card using both of the sets. The apartment building or the City Holiday die set and then the Christmas cocoa mug don't exactly go hand in hand together. But if you brainstorm a little bit, you should be able to come up with something unique and clever, because there are always ways how die sets, and not just die sets, stamp sets, better press plates, glimmer plates, embossing folders can be combined on one and unique project. So here's a look at the card. Once finished, it shows a whole bunch of techniques. I have partial die cutting, I have extended die cutting, I have creative die cutting where I'm mixing the different die sets. I also have extended foiling, if you will. So lots and lots of cool techniques all featured on this card. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and feel inspired to create, whether you use these products or look for products in your stash and try and find unique and unexpected ways how you can combine these goodies. Please leave me a comment below and let me know if you're yes or no for partial die cutting. Love you all, and I'll see you again next time. Bye!